Alice has a high school class reunion and decides to dress casually to go there. Karen criticizes her, asking, "What if you meet a good guy there?" In response, Alice mocks Karen about her relationship with Mr. Wang. Karen is always cynical about Alice's dating life, yet when it comes to her own, she goes all in to take care of Mr. Wang. At the reunion, Alice finds she has nothing in common with her old classmates. They're all married, have stable jobs, and even have kids, while Alice has only recently finished her master's degree. Later, Andrew shows up and reveals to Alice that his girlfriend broke up with him because she decided to do postgraduate studies abroad and didn't want a long-distance relationship. He also quit his job and has returned to their hometown for a break. After the party, they chat on the way home, and Alice learns that Andrew specializes in computer security and can unlock computers. The next day, Alice brings him Peter's computer and asks him to crack the password. Afterward, Danny comes to pick up Alice and takes her to a new house. He tells her he wants to marry her and have children as soon as possible, but Alice isn't ready for it yet. Meanwhile, Emma has returned to the dance school as a dance teacher. Like before, all the parents want to enroll their children in her class, and her photo is once again being used as the school's image. Principal Zheng informs her of two updates. The bad news is that Brandon has resigned and is nowhere to be found, and the good news is that, given Emma's talent and circumstance, the school now requires only 400,000 yuan from her as a joint investor for her to be eligible to compete for the position of principal at the new campus. Later, Brandon finally shows up at Dorothy's chicken shop. Emma initially doesn't let him in, but Brandon insists that he's hungry and goes into the kitchen to make some fried chicken himself. When Emma confronts him for disappearing without a word, he casually tells her he wants to be with her and become Dorothy's son-in-law, and he doesn't mind that Emma can't have children. Brandon later reveals to Emma the story between him and Hannah, which led him to quit dancing. He explains that he and Hannah had been lovers and dance partners for many years. Everything was perfect until one day, they went mountain climbing, and an accident caused Hannah to lose her legs, and she had to use prosthetics. She recovered and returned to training, determined to prove she was still the best dancer. She entered a competition and trained day and night, but despite her efforts, she didn't win. Devastated, Hannah eventually ended her own life. This is why Brandon doesn't want Emma to push herself too hard. He's afraid she'll face the same tragic outcome as Hannah. Emma already knows about this story from Ms. Leah. She now tells Brandon about her recent encounter with Leah. Leah had felt that Emma wasn't ready for a big competition and refused to guide her. Emma proposed convincing Brandon to be her dance partner, but Leah didn't believe that was possible because she believes Brandon had given up on his dance career. In the present, Emma tries once again to persuade Brandon to dance with her, but he becomes upset and leaves abruptly. Meanwhile, Andrew manages to unlock Peter's computer, allowing Alice to view a video of Peter's last words. In the video, Peter confesses that he wanted to end his life after being suppressed by Karen for so many years. Alice watches the video in tears, feeling deep resentment toward Karen. At home, Karen looks at a picture of herself with her two children, unable to understand why both of them have abandoned her in different ways. Alice no longer wants to live with Karen, so she decides to accept Danny's marriage proposal. She informs Karen about her decision, but even Karen thinks it's a rushed marriage. Alice stands firm and tells Karen that she's finally doing what she wants. When Karen begins screaming and crying, she starts comparing Peter to Alice, saying that if Peter were still alive, he would never treat his mother this way. She describes Peter as the perfect child, smart, well-behaved, and so on. Fed up, Alice finally reveals the truth about Peter's anxiety, which had prevented him from finishing his exams. She tells Karen about the video recording, but Karen refuses to believe her, calling her a liar. Alice meets Danny's parents to discuss their upcoming wedding. Karen, still furious with Alice, refuses to attend, so Alice lies to Danny's parents, saying Karen is sick and in the hospital. Danny's parents wants the wedding take place next month and offer to organize everything. When Alice informs Karen of the wedding date, Karen is even more shocked and immediately rushes over to meet Danny's family. Alice, wanting to annoy Karen, agrees to the rushed wedding plans. Karen is initially suspicious, but when she learns that Danny comes from a good background and makes a good money, she relents. The wedding date is set for the beginning of the next month. However, after Danny's family leaves, Karen still feels uneasy about the suddenly urgent wedding. In Danny's car, his parents discuss what sounds like a scandal involving Danny that they hope to cover up with the marriage. On the way home, Karen and Alice argue, with Alice accusing Karen of mistreating both her and Peter. Meanwhile, Emma goes to the gym to find Brandon. She tells him she doesn't want to pressure him to be her dance partner if he isn't comfortable and that she simply wants to be with him. Moved, Brandon hugs her and eventually agrees to be her partner. Karen decides to visit Peter's old high school and speaks with his homeroom teacher. She finally learns that what Alice said was true. Peter had been unable to finish his test. Later, she goes to the park, finds Mr. Wang, and confides in him, expressing her disappointment in herself for not treating her children better. When Karen returns home, she apologizes to Alice and shares a rumor she's heard about Danny. According to the rumor, Danny has a reputation as a playboy, and Karen suggests that Alice reconsider the marriage. Still angry, Alice accuses Karen of trying to sabotage her relationship with Danny so that Alice will be forced to stay with her forever. Despite her anger, Alice decides to investigate. The next day, she goes to Danny's house unannounced, the place already decorated for the upcoming wedding. To her shock, she discovers Danny in bed with another woman. Disgusted, she tries to leave, but Danny chases after her, insisting they should still get married. He argues that it would be a win-win for both of them. Danny could continue his lifestyle, while Alice would escape her toxic relationship with Karen and enjoy a wealthy life. Devastated, Alice walks away in tears, and Danny orders his people to follow her. Alice goes to the dance studio, where she sees Emma and Brandon rehearsing. Not wanting to disturb them, she decides to drink alone to drown her sorrow. Later, Emma and Brandon find Alice outside and check on her. Alice hides the fact that Danny has been unfaithful. She reminds them to attend her wedding and then leaves. Alice walks home in sadness and, in her despair, even considers ending her life by standing in the middle of the road, waiting for a car to hit her. Out of nowhere, Danny appears and pulls her off the road. He apologizes, promising to break up with the other woman, but Alice still doesn't trust him. Still, desperate to get away from Karen, she ultimately decides to go through with the wedding the next day. Meanwhile, Karen goes to talk to Dorothy about Alice's situation. Mr. Wang also shares what he has learned, that Danny and his family are involved with gangsters, which could put Alice in danger if she marries into their family. That evening, Karen apologizes once more and begs Alice not to marry Danny. Confused, Alice heads out into the rain and runs into Andrew, who invites her to his home. Alice takes a shower and has a heart-to-heart conversation with Andrew. Unbeknownst to her, Danny's men are still tailing her and believe Andrew is her lover. After Alice leaves, Danny ambushes Andrew and beats him with a baseball bat. At home, Karen finds the confession video of Peter, and the guilt of not treating him well overwhelms her. She resolves not to let the same thing happen to Alice and is determined to protect her daughter. She calls Mr. Wang to ask for his help. The next morning, Karen makes breakfast for herself and Alice, sharing one final conversation before the wedding. Karen makes a last attempt to persuade Alice to cancel the marriage, but Alice refuses. After getting her wedding dress and makeup done, Alice receives a call from Andrew, who is severely injured and in the hospital. Just as she processes this, Danny and his men arrive to pick her up for the wedding party. Karen immediately calls Mr. Wang, tells him to start their plan. As Danny's wedding caravan makes its way down the road, Mr. Wang's father steps into the middle of the street, blocking them. One of Danny's men exits the car and attempts to attack the elderly man, but to everyone's surprise, Mr. Wang's father is stronger than he appears and quickly blocks the thug's blows. He demands that Danny come out to speak with him, leaving Alice alone in the car. The thug tries to beat the old man, but Mr. Wang's father points to a young man nearby who was recording the scene, daring Danny to proceed. Just then, a group of fan-dancing ladies rushes in, surrounding the convoy and covering the view of all the cars. Mr. Wang opens Alice's car door and urges her to leave, explaining that Karen has arranged for her to go back to Beijing. Mr. Wang tells her that, despite her harsh ways, Karen has always cared deeply for her. Alice steps out of the car, and Karen takes her place. The old man then leaves, and Danny returns to the car, stunned to find Karen inside. Karen firmly tells him that Alice is precious to her, and she would do anything to protect her and ensure her happiness. Meanwhile, Emma and Brandon participate in a dance competition. Their performance is going well until Emma falls during a jump, leading to their elimination. Emma, however, asks the judges to give Brandon another chance as a solo dancer. After some discussion, they agree, and Leah, who happens to be in the judge team, goes backstage to encourage him. Brandon performs his solo, moving the entire audience with his heartfelt dance, and Emma watches proudly as he shines on stage once again. Sometime later, Karen and Mr. Wang attend the grand opening ceremony of Emma Dance Studio. Emma and Brandon's performance at the competition has made them famous, attracting many students to the school. Karen also learns from Dorothy that Alice has completed her internship in Beijing and is about to start her full-time job. As Brandon's fame grows, he receives numerous invitations to tour and perform. Karen, always protective, asks Dorothy to keep an eye on him in case he might stray from Emma, but Dorothy assures her there's no need to worry. Danny, meanwhile, faces an investigation for his involvement in black market activities and is now powerless, leaving Karen free of any concerns about potential revenge from him. Brandon teaches at Emma's school whenever he has time, and their relationship continues to grow stronger. He is planning to propose to her soon. Dorothy's birthday arrives, and the family goes out to celebrate at a restaurant. Coincidentally, Linda and David's family are also dining there, discussing Linda and David's upcoming marriage. David, now looking gaunt and pale. His mother makes remark of Linda for her age, and Linda leaves angrily. When David follows her outside, she breaks up with him. After Linda storms off, David notices Emma, Dorothy, and Brandon leaving the restaurant together. He is astonished by Dorothy's transformation and learns that Emma and Brandon are now a couple. Though he congratulates them, his eyes are full of regret. Meanwhile, in Beijing, Alice leaves work and notices an elderly woman selling plants on the street. The woman has a similar expression to Karen's, a look of stoic endurance and emptiness, so Alice decides to buy several plants from her. Later, Andrew arrives at Alice's apartment with some food. He notices the plants and asks Alice about them, and she explains that the woman's distant look reminded her of her mother, who was often seen trapped by her own destiny. Alice decides to call Karen to check in. They share a heartfelt conversation and finally reconcile. The next morning, Emma and Dorothy go for a run together in the park, moving toward a brighter future. Everyone, at last, has the ending they deserve.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more videos like this.